achieved.
Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we're breaking in the upcoming UFC on Fox 9 event, which will take place on December 14th. It will feature Demetrious Johnson defending his flyweight title in a rematch against the man he initially won the title from in the tournament finals, in the inaugural flyweight tournament finals, defeating Joseph Benavidez. We have a four-fight main card, which we'll be breaking down on this episode. All of my preliminary fights will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net, so please head over there, check them out. I'm coming off a night where I went 5-5-1, which again wasn't great. I had a slump where I had 2 or 3 consecutive events where I was below 500. Over the last 3 events, I've gone 6-6, 6-4, and 5-5-1. So pretty brutal based on what I've done in the past prior to that. So certainly I'm looking to turn it around. I'm trying to change up the way I look at fights a little bit, look at them from different angles, see what I'm missing, or at least what's happening. Sometimes it's just bad luck. I felt Nick Ring won his last fight, did more in the first round and a half to take that fight than his opponent did. Obviously, Dylan Andrews getting hurt, with an injury, and Pat Barry just being Pat Barry and winding up in the situation he wound up in, costing him the fight. And then, of course, Mark Hunt ending in the draw that I thought he probably did just enough to win, but, I'm satisfied with the draw. I thought it was an excellent fight, easily one of the best heavyweight fights of all time, and it was really enjoyable to watch those two guys go at it. And I certainly wouldn't mind seeing it go down in the future, a rematch. Nonetheless, we have 4 very good-looking fights here. Some of the lighter guys, so this should be interesting and fast-paced and technical. And let's get to my first prediction. We're going to kick things off in the UFC's lightweight division in a fight that was bumped up from the preliminary card after the Carlos Condit-Matt Brown fight was unfortunately dropped due to a Matt Brown injury. Here we have Joe Lauzon, 22-9-0, battling Mac Danzig, 22-11-1. And both guys, they've been really struggling of late. Lauzon's lost 2 in a row, 1-3 over his last 4. And he's coming off a loss against Michael Johnson that many felt was going to be a fairly easy win. He was a heavy favorite, and he looked, to say the least, horrible in that bout. Danzig, on the other hand, similar record. He's lost 2 in a row, also 1-3 in his last 4, but his struggles extend much further back. He's only got 3 wins in his last 10 fights, and overall it's a good question mark as to why he's still in the UFC, at least when he's struggling that much. But at the same time, he's a talented fighter. We'll see how it goes. This could be it for him. He needs to win this fight, I think, to keep around. Otherwise, he might be on his way out, headed to the Bellator World Series of Fighting. Most guys overall have the majority of their wins on the mat. Danzig, 10 wins by submission. Joe Lauzon, 18 wins by submission. Statistically, Lauzon has some better grappling numbers, 2.56 takedowns at 42%, versus Danzig, who comes in just over 1 takedown per fight, successful takedown attempt per fight at 39%. Also, Lauzon, 3.41 subs for 15 minutes, so he's very aggressive with the submission game, versus Danzig, only 0.6 subs. But again, maybe Danzig only needs one opportunity to put a fight away. But again, I think he's not getting himself in a position to use those submissions as much as Lauzon is. And they said Lauzon's a very aggressive grappler. On the flip side, both men have been submitted in their careers as well. Lauzon has been tapped out 3 times, and Matt Danzig has been submitted twice. But one of those 2 was that phantom tap out of the hands of Matt Wyman, so take that as much as, take that as, for what it is. Danzig impressively did submit Mark Bocek, and that's very impressive in its own right, and I like that. But I think Lauzon should have the edge in the grappling. He's more aggressive. He's a better wrestler overall. But then again, he didn't look that strong in his last fight and was unable to get Michael Johnson in a position. He looked poor overall, so, you have to question whether he'll be up to the challenge here. On the feet, Danzig is very technical. He outlands Lauzon at a clip of 3.04 to 2.24 strikes per minute. Lauzon, he lands some decent combinations, but his biggest problem is getting outworked. Michael Johnson. That's funny. Michael Johnson certainly outworked him, and we saw Jim Miller really overwhelm him as well. And one of the big questions is, for me, has Lauzon's balls-to-the-wall style of career taken its toll on Joe and really worn him down to the point where he can't hold up under pressure and he struggles to meet his opponent's pressure? Both guys' striking defense is pretty poor. They both get hit more than they hit their opponents. Danzig not nearly as significant, getting tagged at a rate of 3.15, and his offensive numbers are just over 3. But Joe Lauzon, 4.69 strikes landed per minute by his opponent. That's a big number, and if he gets teed off at that rate by a guy like Danzig, he's going to lose this fight. We also saw Joe Lauzon, we go back, he lost a decision to Sammy Stout when he was unable to get the fight to the mat. He gassed in that match, and that allowed Sam Stout to pull away with his technical striking. And that's something, if he gasses here, Danzig certainly will get a significant boost and should be able to get the better of him on the feet. Danzig's coming off a brutal knockout at the hands of Melvin Gillard. It's one of those knockouts, it was brutal to watch. I felt it's one of the few ones I've actually seen a guy get knocked out and felt really bad. It was just a poor whole scenario there, the way he reacted and got drilled. Both men, for the most part, are inconsistent. Lauzon does have some solid wins, though, over guys like Melvin Gillard, Jamie Varner, and Jeremy Stevens. where Danzig's 3 wins in his last 7 against Efrain Escudero, Justin Buckles, and Joe Stevenson aren't exactly top-level wins against guys that are no longer in the promotion even. For me, Lauzon usually responds in these tough situations, and I'm going to back the guy who's been a little bit more consistent, had a little more success lately. So my prediction is Joe Lauzon to defeat Mac Danzig, which should be an entertaining decision. We're going to move right along to the first of 3 main card fights, at least, that involve a team member of Team Alpha Male, and Danny Castillo also competing on the card. So there's 4 Alpha Male fighters. This is really Alpha Male versus the world as far as I'm concerned. Nonetheless, we are in the UFC's featherweight divisions. The number 1 ranked featherweight in the world, Chad Money Mendes, 15-1-0, battles the number 8th ranked featherweight in Nick the Carney Lentz, 26-5-2 with 1 no contest. Mendes has been on a roll of late since losing to Aldo, and Lentz is undefeated since cutting down to 145. And it's a battle of 2 wrestlers. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Lentz is a former lightweight with 2 inches of height and 2 inches of reach, so he's slightly bigger than Mendes, but I don't think, Mendes still physically, he's a monster. But as I said, battle of 2 wrestlers. Both guys NCAA Division I wrestlers. Lentz also has a BJJ purple belt, both very strong on the mat. And a lot of times we will see a battle like a matchup like this can lead to a striking war, but that's not always the case. So I'll look at the grappling aspects first. Statistically, Mendes 4.67 takedowns at 58%. We saw him land 3 against Clay Guida, 5 versus Hani Yahya, 8 versus Cup Swanson, 6 versus Eric Koch. So he's put up some big numbers in the past, and he's really quite capable of grinding out opponents on the ground. Nick Lentz, equally as impressive, 4.41 takedowns at not nearly as high a completion rate, though, 38%. He landed 4 against Hakran Diaz in his last fight. A very impressive 10 against Diego Nunes, who's known for being very tough to take down, and 2 against Evan Dunham in his last lightweight bout. So Lentz very capable on the mat as well. One thing to keep in mind here, Chad Mendes takedown defense, 100%. No one has ever taken him down in the UFC or WEC. That's very impressive. Versus Nick Lentz, 47% takedown defense, and he's been taken down multiple times. Dunham took him down twice. Mark Bocek took him down 5 times. Waylon Lowe also took him down 4 times until he got caught in that fight. So Lentz far from invincible as far as his defensive grappling. But Nick's only been taken down 1 time since cutting down to featherweight, and that was by Hakran Diaz when he gassed late in that matchup. Nick, he's never really faced an opponent with equal or better wrestling like Mendes will bring to the cage. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And Lentz he's a grinder, very, very solid on the ground. It'll be interesting to see if Mendes is forced to work off his back, if that actually transpires in this fight. We haven't really seen, as I said, we haven't seen that yet, but I'll see how it plays out. For the most part, Mendes has been near perfect, with the exception of getting knocked out by Aldo. Although really, you haven't seen Mendes in any kind of trouble in any of his fights. I'd say if the wrestling does play a role in this bout at all, if it doesn't just cancel each other out, I give the edge to Chad and Mendes, and I think he will be able to score a couple takedowns and possibly put Lentz on his back for a good chunk of time, especially if Lentz gasses if this fight goes long. On the feet, Mendes has been improving significantly. Again, the Dwayne Bang Ludwig influence in the alpha male guys. He has won 4 straight fights by knockout, most impressively knocking out Clay Guida in his last fight, and Darren Elkins 1 fight before. Both guys similar to Nick Lentz, grinders with decent striking, and Mendes just hit him hard and put him away. And I said he hits very hard as his technique's improving. That's impressive. Lentz, he's a decent striker. Not a lot of people give him credit for what he's capable on the feet, but he still relies heavily on his grappling. Against Diaz Nunez and Aije Mitsuoka, he needed his grappling to have success in those fights. He didn't rely on his striking, and that's something here. If he can't out-grapple Chad Mendes, that puts him in a big hole. He did get chewed up pretty significantly on the feet by Evan Dunham, but again, that was at lightweight against a bigger fighter. Mendes, for me, is the more gifted athlete. And again, as I said, Lentz is durable and he's a grinder. His cardio seems to be a problem of late. He's had trouble late in fights folding up. And just lucky for him, he hasn't been put away, and he's done enough early on to take those fights. This bout could be much more entertaining than a lot of people anticipate that it will be when 2 grinders or wrestlers get out. I'm very much impressed with what Chad Mendes has done of late, and I think he continues his success here en route to another title shot. So my prediction is Chad Mendes to defeat Nick Lentz, and I'll take Mendes by TKO. We now move to the co-main event of the evening in the UFC's bantamweight division, in what is pretty much a tight number 1 contenders bout in a match a lot of people are looking forward to. As the number 2 ranked bantamweight in the world and former WEC featherweight champion, the California kid Uriah Faber, 29-6-0, battles former title challenger, the number 3 ranked Michael Mayday McDonald. Now, winner, as I said, most likely gets a title shot at the winner of Barao Cruz. They are number 1, 2 as far as the bantamweights in the world, and here we're looking at 3-4, basically, if you want to give the champion the number 1 ranking. Whoever the champion comes out, whether it be interim champion or the current, or the actual man who's holding the belt, or held the belt originally. This is a massive fight for Uriah Faber, not just beyond the title implications. He could potentially be removed from a title shot ever again at this division if he loses here, because this would put 3 men above him. Up until this date, we basically only had Renan Barão and Dominic Cruz ahead of Faber in the rankings, but Michael McDonald with a win would pass him by. Faber has yet to drop a non-title fight in his WEC UFC career, which is very impressive. The fights he's lost twice against Mike Brown with the title on the line, once against Jose Aldo, Dominic Cruz in his fight in the UFC, and of course Renan Barão most recently in the interim title fight. Michael McDonald's coming out. He's very young. He's coming off a huge win over Brad Pickett after losing his title fight against Renan Barão as well, and he looked very impressive against Brad Pickett in that matchup. Physically, McDonald's 3-inch height advantage, 1-inch reach advantage, so he is going to be the taller and longer man, but I see Faber's physically a little bit more built than he is. Statistically, McDonald has a nice edge, 3.02 strikes landed per minute versus 2.68, so that's something to keep in mind too if this fight does stay standing. But let's talk about the ground game first. Faber's an NCAA Division I wrestler, BJJ brown belt, and the stats are misleading about his grappling skills, as he can and will dominate with his wrestling. We saw him absolutely hammer BJJ black belt Uriah Alcantara on the ground, landed some brutal ground and pound, put together 4 takedowns in that fight, and he also put a very good wrestler in Scott Jorgensen on the mat with 4 takedowns, which was quite impressive as well. Now, McDonald's a BJJ brown belt and very good on the ground on his own right. 5 submissions, as you say, caught Brad Pickett with a beautiful triangle off his back. But he's never faced anyone on the level of Faber's wrestling before, and that's something to keep in mind. He was submitted by Renan Barão, and actually earlier in his UFC career, he fought Chris Carriazo, who's a very talented flyweight, and that was a back-and-forth bout. And McDonald had some struggles with Carriazo on the ground, but obviously he's improved since that bout. Faber, he's never been submitted. 16-0 in fights ending by submission, and he's a lot of submission wins over very good grapplers. Guys have only been submitted once, and it happens to be by Uriah Faber, which is quite impressive. Mike Brown at featherweight and Dominic Cruz in his title fight against Faber are the only 2 fighters that have had any consistent success with a wrestling-based attack against Uriah Faber. Other than that, no one's been able to take him down with consistency and chew him up on the mat. So that's something to keep in mind. I think that gives Faber the grappling edge in this bout. Now, on the feet, McDonald has brutal stopping power. 9 wins by knockout in the UFC, destroying former champion Miguel Torres, also knocking out Alex Soto, which was very impressive. He has solid combinations, really rolls with and counters well and effectively. Excellent uppercut, which we saw him nail Torres with. He also has some solid leg kicks, and he will go high and can land with extreme effectiveness and devastation if it does connect. Faber has been KO'd twice. He's an unorthodox striker, though, which can give his opponents a lot of difficulties. He hits very hard, 7 KO wins as well. In his bout with Eddie Wine, he struggled early when he couldn't get the TDs, but he found another gear, mixed it up, and was able to control a very good striker as far as that was concerned, and outstrike him in that bout. Faber, he struggles a little bit against fighters who can keep on the outside. Dominic Cruz and Renan Barão did a nice job of that. He couldn't get inside, couldn't land with his strikes, and that shows up when he is the shorter fighter, and I expect to see McDonald trying to employ a strategy similar to that. I guess I said Faber should have the wrestling and grappling advantage, which is massive. For me, I give McDonald a slight advantage in striking, not massive, not a big advantage, but still good enough to be effective on the feet. I like Faber's experience, speed, and cardio to play big roles in this fight, even though it is only a 3-round bout. I expect to see Faber use his wrestling to take McDonald's striking out of the equation, and Uriah Faber is so good on the mat. I think he grinds out a win here, so my prediction is Uriah Faber to defeat Michael McDonald. I'll take Faber by decision. We move now to the main event of the evening in the UFC flyweight title fight as the champion Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson, 18-2-1, battles the number 1 contender Joseph Benavidez, 19-3-0. And these are the 2 best flyweights in the world, undisputed. No one else can hold a claim to this spot, and they are going to go at it once again. In the first meeting, Benavidez was the big-time favorite, and a lot of people had him as crowned as the uncrowned 125-pound champion of the world. But I saw different, and Johnson over 3-1 underdog. I picked him to win that fight outright by decision, and that's exactly what happened and what transpired there. It was a split decision. I felt DJ did clearly won that bout. Statistically, it indicates that he clearly won the fight, outlanding Benavidez 77-44 on the feet in significant strikes and holding a 5-0 edge in takedowns, which are pretty impressive numbers considering how talented Joseph Benavidez is. Johnson overall, he was too quick, he had better technique, and he simply out-hustled Benavidez in that bout. Now, Benavidez, he does have good power, and that's impressive, and that's part of his game. And we see catch Johnson a couple times with some shots and hurt him, just couldn't put him away and couldn't do it consistently enough. Since that fight, Ludwig has come along again, working with the alpha male guys. I've talked about this a couple of times, but nonetheless, it's important to mention here. His striking is improving. We saw him stop Darren Uyenoyama and Jussier Formiga. But keep in mind, those guys are grappling-based fighters with not a great striking background. So again, as impressive as it is for Joseph Benavidez to pick up the knockout wins, it's not that big of a deal as far as I'm concerned. One major advantage for Joseph Benavidez coming into this bout is that alpha male with Faber, Mendes, Danny Castillo, and Benavidez all peaking at the same time and getting ready to fight at the same event. That's really going to put these guys pushing each other because they're all in the best condition, they're training together, they're working together. But at the same time, the disadvantage is with too many guys preparing for fights is one guy not getting enough focus. And I know Benavidez is fighting for the title, but also you've got Faber fighting for a title shot, and Mendes are going to be fighting for a title shot as well. So the question is, do they not get enough one-on-one attention? I don't know how that works out, but we'll see if that has any impact. Either way, I thought it was worth noting. Since Johnson's title fight win, we saw him dominate title challenger John Moraga, and he won a very tough fight with John Dodson, who, in my opinion, is the next best flyweight out there. And arguably, I think he could beat Joseph Benavidez should they and when they do eventually meet down the road. Johnson is the fastest fighter in the division, by far, arguably the fastest fighter in the UFC. His striking is still improving, and he has great wrestling. He's a very technical fighter all the way around, and he's very durable. And he got hit by Moraga a couple times, and he got hit by Dodson a couple times, and he rallied back, which was quite impressive. Johnson, striking advantage, strikes lane per minute edge, 3.32 to 2.99, so just a slight edge there. But impressively, his takedowns are where he has a massive edge, at least statistically. 3.73 takedowns at 56% versus Benavidez 1.26 at 25%. So Joseph Benavidez is not boasting nearly as good at takedown wrestlers numbers, despite coming from a very wrestling-heavy and wrestling-oriented camp like Alpha Male is. Defensively, 62% takedown defense for DJ, 53% for Benavidez. And again, keep in mind, it was 5-0 was the takedown score in their first fight. So Johnson has an edge both statistically, capabilities, and mentally, because Benavidez hasn't taken him down yet, and Johnson was like, I can take you down if I want to. Now, Benavidez overall, he's 1-3 in his career when he loses the takedown battle. His lone win when he lost it was against Ian McCall. He beat Ian McCall. McCall landed one takedown, so it's not exactly the best depiction there. Now, for Benavidez, he needs the KO as far as I'm concerned. He cannot outpoint Demetrious Johnson. Unless you stop him, you're not going to land more shots than them. He hasn't shown good enough wrestling for me to control him on the ground, and that's something I just don't see him doing consistently enough to take 3 rounds. Johnson did get hurt a couple times by John Dodson, but he's fat. Dodson's faster than Benavidez, and that allowed him to keep up with Johnson and land those shots. I think we're seeing Benavidez doing a lot of swinging and missing, and that's unfortunate. But still, it's going to result in him, not landing the big shots that he needs to land to be effective in this fight. Both guys have made some significant strides since their first meeting, but for me, Johnson still simply has more to offer than Joseph Benavidez in all areas of this bout. He's fought better competition and picked up victories in impressive fashion, and my prediction is Demetrious Johnson to retain his UFC flyweight title and continue his reign, and he'll do it by defeating Joseph Benavidez by decision. So those are my 4 main card predictions for the UFC on Fox 9 event. I have all of my preliminary predictions will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. The public pick section for this event is back up and running, which is something to take note of as well. So please log in, make your votes, get your votes posted there. Josh Hart will have his predictions posted as well, so keep that in mind. And overall, I'm looking forward to this card. I'm hoping to turn things around again. This slump can't last forever. Knock on wood. Nonetheless, thank you very much as always for tuning in, supporting my show, and I guess it'll be the last time I talk to you guys before Christmas. So for those, happy holidays to all of my listeners out there. Merry Christmas, or whatever holiday you're celebrating. Please enjoy this great time of the year. Take care.